The Winchester rifle shook in Eliza's hands as footsteps echoed on the wooden porch. 2 men, maybe 3. She pressed her back against the cabin wall, Clara's wedding dress hanging behind her like a ghost in white lace. "We know you're in there, pretty lady," a voice called, honey smooth but poison tipped. 10 years. 10 years Ethan Cole had lived alone on this Wyoming range, faithful to his dead wife's memory. Until 3 weeks ago, when her sister appeared at his door with eyes the color of autumn leaves and secrets that could destroy them both. 3 weeks earlier, Ethan had been mending fence by lamplight when he rode back to the cabin. Windows glowed yellow against the darkness, the first light his home had seen after sunset in a decade. He stood in the doorway, heart hammering against his ribs. A woman sat at Clara's kitchen table, reading Clara's diary. Same golden hair, same delicate hands, same way of tilting her head when she read. But where Clara had been quiet water, this woman was flame. "You're Elizabeth," he said, not moving past the threshold. "Eliza." She looked up, and her eyes were brown where Clara's had been blue, different but somehow familiar. "I'm sorry for letting myself in." The door was unlocked. "Doors don't need locks out here." He stepped inside, suddenly conscious of his muddy boots, his whiskey breath. "Your family's worried." "My family sold me to the highest bidder." Her voice carried an edge Clara's never had. "Harold Pemberton offered them mining investments in exchange for a young wife. I decided I'd rather freeze to death in Wyoming than suffocate in Denver." Snow began tapping against the windows, the kind that could last for days. "Storm's coming," Ethan said. "I know." She closed the diary. Clara wrote about Wyoming winters, how they could kill you if you weren't careful. Or save you if you were brave enough to let them. What did Clara tell her sister about this place? About him? And why did looking at Eliza Bennett feel like drowning and breathing at the same time? Ethan woke before dawn, his routine of 10 years unchanged, despite the woman sleeping in the spare room. He built up the fire, put coffee on to boil, and sat at the kitchen table cleaning his revolver by the gray light filtering through frost-edged windows. He could hear Eliza moving around upstairs, the floorboards creaking under her unfamiliar weight. Clara had moved silent as a ghost. Eliza stomped like a newborn colt. She couldn't cook, burned the eggs, oversalted the beans, nearly set fire to the kitchen trying to work Clara's old wood stove. "City girl," Ethan muttered, cleaning up her latest disaster. "I can learn." Eliza stood in the doorway, wearing one of Clara's aprons over her traveling dress. The sight of it made something twist in his chest. Clara learned, didn't she? Clara was different. How? He didn't answer, couldn't explain that Clara had been gentle rain where Eliza was summer lightning. That Clara had fit into this life like she was born to it, while Eliza fought everything, the isolation, the work, the endless silence. But she was stubborn, determined. When he found her in the barn at dawn, trying to milk the cow with hands soft as silk, something shifted inside him. Like this, he moved behind her, his calloused hands covering hers on the wooden bucket, gentle but firm. She smelled like roses and determination. When she leaned back against him just for a moment, Ethan forgot how to breathe. "There," she whispered, as warm milk hit the bucket. "I did it." "You did." He stepped away before he did something they'd both regret, retreating to the safety of distance. That night, the blizzard hit. Wind that screamed like the damned, snow that erased the world beyond the cabin walls. Ethan found half his herd missing, scattered God knew where in the white hell outside. "I'm going after them," he told Eliza, pulling on his heavy coat. "In this, you'll die out there. They're all I have left." But she was already reaching for Clara's winter coat. Her chin set in a line he was beginning to know. "Then I'm coming with you. Like hell. You need help, and I need to prove I belong here." She met his eyes, unflinching. Did I stutter? The cold hit Eliza like a slap, stealing her breath as they pushed through snowdrifts to the barn. Ethan saddled 2 horses, his movements economical, practiced. When he lifted her into the saddle, his hands lingered at her waist a half-second too long. "Stay close!" he shouted over the wind. "Get disoriented out here. You'll freeze before you know which way's home." They rode south, following tracks already disappearing under fresh snow. Visibility stretched maybe 20 feet ahead. Beyond that, nothing but swirling white. The cold seeped through Eliza's clothes despite the layers, numbing her fingers, her toes, then working inward. An hour in, they found the cattle huddled in a draw, half frozen but alive. Ethan whistled, sharp and commanding. The beasts lumbered to their feet, eyes rolling. "Drive them northwest," he called. "Toward the sun." What sun? Eliza thought, looking at the uniform gray sky. But she did as he said, keeping the weak light to her right shoulder as they pushed the cattle home. By the time the barn came into view, Eliza's lips were blue and her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Ethan helped her down, his own face red-chapped from the wind, and half carried her to the cabin. He built up the fire and made coffee laced with whiskey. She sat wrapped in quilts, still trembling. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "Not giving up." She looked at him over her coffee cup, and for a moment he saw not Clara's ghost, but Elizabeth Bennet, brave, stubborn, beautiful in her own right. "Is this what Clara felt?" she asked. "This belonging? Clara never had to fight for it. Maybe that's why I need to stay. To fight for something Clara never had to." The words hung between them like smoke from the fire. Ethan stood abruptly, retreating to the safety of distance. But that night, lying alone in his cold bed, he found himself listening for her breathing in the next room, found himself wondering what it would feel like to not be alone anymore. When he heard her crying, soft, muffled sounds she thought he couldn't hear, it took every ounce of willpower not to go to her. Some battles, he told himself, were meant to be fought alone. And the strangers came on a Tuesday when Ethan was in town buying supplies. Eliza saw them from the kitchen window, 2 men on horseback moving with the easy confidence of predators. She'd seen their type in Denver, men who took what they wanted and damned the consequences. Clara's diary had mentioned them, drifters, men who preyed on isolated ranches knowing help was hours away. She found the Winchester where Ethan kept it above the mantel. Her hands shook as she checked the chamber. 5 bullets. She'd never fired a gun in her life. "Hello, the house." Eliza stayed silent, praying they'd move on. They didn't. The front door exploded inward with a crash that sent splinters flying. The tall man stepped through, tipping his hat like a gentleman caller. "Now that's more like it. Pretty little thing all alone out here." His eyes moved over her like dirty hands. "Where's your man?" "Sweetheart." "Gone." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Won't be back for hours." "Perfect." The second man appeared behind him, shorter but meaner looking. A scar ran from his ear to his mouth, pulling his lips into a permanent sneer. "We got time to get acquainted." The rifle felt impossibly heavy in her hands. "Stay back." "Or what?" The tall one laughed. "You gonna shoot us?" "Little bird, you even know how to use that thing?" She raised the Winchester to her shoulder the way she had seen Ethan do. "I know enough." "I doubt that." He lunged. The gun went off, deafeningly loud in the small cabin. The bullet splintered the doorframe inches from his head. Both men froze. "Next one goes in your chest," Eliza said, working the lever action the way she'd watched Ethan practice. "Your choice." For a moment she thought they might leave. The tall one's eyes calculated distances, odds, the tremor in her hands. Then he smiled. "You got 4 shots left, little bird." "Think you can get us both?" They separated, moving to flank her. Eliza backed against the kitchen table, swinging the rifle between them. "Easy now," the scarred one crooned. "Nobody needs to get hurt." "We just want to be friendly," the tall one agreed, reaching for his gun belt. "Real friendly." Eliza fired again. The bullet took him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He hit the wall hard. Cursing, 3 shots left. The scarred man pulled his pistol. "Bitch, you shot Billy." He raised his gun. "Should have left when you had the chance." Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline making her aim wild. The scarred man raised his gun, and Eliza knew with crystal clarity that she was about to die. The cabin door slammed open. Ethan Cole stepped through like avenging thunder, his Colt already in his hand. His eyes took in the scene in one sweep. Eliza pressed against the table, the wounded man against the wall, the scarred stranger with his gun trained on her heart. "Drop it." 2 words. Flat. Final. The voice of a man who'd killed before. The scarred man hesitated. Ethan's gun boomed. The stranger's pistol flew from his hand, taking 2 fingers with it. He screamed and fell to his knees, clutching his mangled hand. "Both of you out. Now, before I forget my manners." The wounded men scrambled for the door, the tall one leaving a trail of blood across Clara's clean floor. "If I see you on my land again," Ethan called after them, "I'll bury what's left." Hoofbeats faded into the distance. Eliza stood frozen, the Winchester still clutched in her white-knuckled hands. The danger was over. But her body hadn't gotten the message yet. "Eliza." Ethan's voice was gentle now. He moved slowly, like approaching a spooked horse. "You're safe." She looked at him, really looked, and saw the fear he was trying to hide. Fear for her, fear of what might have happened. "I thought," she started, then stopped. Her legs gave out. Ethan caught her before she hit the floor, gathering her against his chest. She could feel his heart hammering, fast as her own. "You did good," he whispered into her hair. Clara's rifle in the hands of a Bennett woman. Those bastards never stood a chance. She tilted her face up to look at him. They were close enough that she could count the lines around his eyes, see the silver in his dark hair, close enough that when he looked down at her, something electric passed between them. This was the moment, the point of no return, and they both knew it. Ethan. His name on her lips broke something inside him. 10 years of loneliness, 10 years of faithful grief, 10 years of telling himself that love was something he'd already had and lost. But Eliza Bennett was here, alive and warm in his arms, looking at him like he was salvation instead of damnation. He kissed her. It started gentle, a brush of lips, a question asked and answered, then deeper, hungrier. 10 years of want compressed into a single moment of surrender. She tasted like coffee and courage, her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and Ethan forgot everything except the impossible sweetness of not being alone. He backed her against the kitchen table, his mouth moving to the curve of her neck. She gasped, her head falling back, and the sound went through him like whiskey and lightning. Eliza. His hands found the buttons of her dress, and she didn't stop him. If anything, she pulled him closer, her own fingers working at his belt. This was madness. This was betrayal. This was the most right thing he'd felt in 10 years. Her dress slipped from her shoulders, revealing skin like cream and shadows. She stood before him in her chemise and petticoats, beautiful and brave and wanting him as much as he wanted her. Ethan's hands shook as he reached for her and stopped. On the mantel, Clara's photograph watched them with painted eyes. His wife, his first love, the woman who died in this very room while he held her hand and promised to love her forever. The guilt hit him like a physical blow. I can't. He stepped back, his breath coming hard. God help me. I can't. Eliza's face crumpled. Ethan, this is Clara's house, Clara's room, Clara's... He couldn't finish, couldn't say husband, because it would break them both. She pulled her dress back up with shaking hands. I understand. Do you? No tears tracked down her cheeks, but her voice shook. I should have known. Should have realized I could never compete with a ghost. She walked past him to the bedroom, her spine straight despite the tears. The door closed with a quiet click that sounded like the end of the world. Ethan stood alone in his kitchen, surrounded by the wreckage of his careful control. Outside, wind rattled the windows. Inside, silence stretched like a wound. On the mantel, Clara's photograph smiled its eternal smile. Some promises, he thought, were meant to last forever. But what happened when forever met the impossible present? When duty collided with desire? When a dead woman's memory stood between two living hearts? By morning, Eliza was gone. The note was short, 3 lines in her careful handwriting. Thank you for showing me what Clara found here. I'm sorry I couldn't be her. The train leaves Cheyenne at noon. E. Ethan read it twice, standing in the empty kitchen. The coffee was cold. The fire had died to ashes. Even the air felt different without her in it. He should let her go, should count himself lucky that temptation was removing itself before he damned them both. Instead, he saddled his fastest horse. The road to Cheyenne stretched 37 miles across windswept prairie. Ethan pushed hard, his mount's hooves eating up the frozen ground. The train whistle echoed across the flats, distant but getting closer, too far, too late. But he rode anyway, because some chances only came once, because 10 years of faithful grief had taught him the weight of words unsaid, because Eliza Bennett deserved better than being loved in Clara's shadow. The depot appeared through morning haze, a cluster of buildings beside the steel rails that connected Wyoming to everywhere else. The eastbound train sat breathing steam, passengers climbing aboard for Denver, Chicago, New York, the world beyond the frontier. He saw her on the platform, a small figure in a traveling coat, clutching a carpet bag like an anchor. She was looking at the train with the expression of someone about to jump off a cliff. Ethan dismounted and walked toward her, his boots loud on the wooden platform. She turned at the sound, and her face went through a dozen emotions: hope, fear, resignation, something that might have been love. "You came," she said. The train whistle blew. All aboard. He was close enough now to see the tears she was fighting, close enough to reach out and touch her face if he wanted to. He wanted to. A conductor walked the platform, calling out destinations. Denver points east. The world of banks and proper marriages and lives lived by other people's rules. The train whistle screamed again. Steam hissed. Wheels began to turn. He held out his hand. "Come home, Eliza." She looked at the train, at his outstretched hand, at the vast Wyoming sky that promised nothing but wind and grass and the kind of love that grew slowly, like good things did. She took his hand. The train pulled away from the station, carrying other people toward other lives. Ethan and Eliza stood on the platform, fingers intertwined, watching it disappear into the distance. She smiled, not Clara's gentle smile, but something entirely her own. "It took me so long to realize I was never running from anything," she said. "I was running toward this." They walked back to where his horse waited. Two figures against the endless horizon. Above them, Wyoming sky stretched blue and infinite, full of weather and possibility. Behind them, the train whistle faded to memory. Sometimes second chances are the only ones that matter.